What's up, Duke fans? Welcome to the Devil's Den podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith, joined by my co-host, Raul. We're happy to welcome back Brian Geisinger. You're probably pretty familiar with him at this point in time for us, but if not, he's a writer over at 247 Sports. He's also the co-host of the BuzzBeat. You probably see his stuff on X/Twitter, over at Substack. We'll plug all of that stuff for you. But we figured we'd get Brian in, do a little NBA draft stuff. So the draft is coming up. Duke has a ton of guys there. We're going to hit the obvious ones, some of the lottery picks. We're going to talk Cooper Flag, going to talk Come On Malawatch, Con Knipple, get into some Sion, some Tyree stuff as well here. Brian, happy to have you back, man. How's the offseason treating you? And as you're preparing for the draft stuff, what's your kind of schedule looking like here? I know you just did some Dame Sarr stuff too. We can talk about that, but
yeah, I'm doing good. Happy draft season to you guys. Thanks for having me back on. And I really like this time of the year. It's honestly, it's some of my favorite time of like the basketball calendar because the sort of like churn and grind of the college season is done. But there's playoff games basically every night. I mean, I know we're in the finals now, so there's sort of like a break between games, but between the NBA playoffs and the WNBA, there's like live games going on every night, but it's not necessarily ones that I'm having to like get up the next day and like clip. And so for me, it's really like three different things, which is like covering the draft. So just this point, I'm really like scouting second round type guys that maybe I didn't get to, or European guys I didn't get to during the college season. It's looking at incoming transfers for next season in the ACC. I've done a lot of that content this season and in off seasons past with Duke, like last year with Malik and Mason and Sion. And then also looking at as much film as I can, getting my hands on like incoming freshmen. So I've been able to watch some Matthew Abel, who's coming in next season at NC State, top 25, 30 prospect. And then I've been able to get into some Cam and Caden Boozer film, some Dame Sarm film, and actually recently got my hands on Columbus versus Brewster. So we've got the Boozers versus Wilkins. So I'm going to watch that either tonight or tomorrow at some point. And then also keeping up with like coaching changes, so I've been able to like study like Ryan Odom's offense a little bit, who's coming from VCU into UVA. So for me, it's nice because there's a lot of like backlog of film to go through and stuff to like get excited for and to prepare about, but it's not like every night there's like 10 live games I'm feeling like I need to see, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think my head is a little bit more clear. My schedule is a little bit more normal, which my sleeping habits and girlfriend definitely appreciate. So I'm doing well, but I appreciate you guys having me back on. It's always fun to talk. It's gonna be really fun talking some of these guys maybe one last time here.
Yeah.
And you've got before we get on to the NBA stuff, you've got like a tome over there on 247 Sports, right, about Dame Sarr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes,
like a 5,000 word article.
So it's up at the Devil's Den, and those guys are also cool with me posting it up at my Substack. So it's it's paywalled at 247. I've got it for free up at I waited basically a week after it went live at 247 and then threw it up my Substack. So you can find it's the same thing in both places. And deep dive on Dame. It was really fun, honestly, getting to go through, maybe half dozen, 7 games of his, along with the Hoop Summit that he participated in. It's getting to see Jabari Parker playing for Barcelona. That was cool.
Yep.
And then just like a fun collective of like former NBA players. Like I covered Willie Hernan-Gomez when he played for the Hornets, the Spanish center that had played in the NBA for several years. He's at Barcelona. So is Thomas Satoransky. So is Chimezie Metu. So there's like there's like a half dozen like former NBA guys. And like legit guys that like didn't have like a cup of coffee, guys that like played 5 to 10 years in the NBA and were like rotation players, if not, more than that. So pretty cool. And it's at Substack or at 247, either location. You can find it there.
Sweet. All right. Well, before we do get into it, this wasn't on our outline, but I felt like the news just came out. Brian, I'm curious. So now we're hearing about potentially a coach's challenge coming into college basketball here. What do you make of that? How do you think we won't get into the whole like court ruling, you can pay your own players. I don't know if that's really probably above our pay grade here, but the idea of the coach's challenge is somewhat interesting. Are we going to get to quarters? Like, where are you seeing this kind of like advancement happen?
Yeah, I think, well, so first off, I do think like if they were to ever go to quarters, I do think that would be a good thing. I think it's like a little silly that this is the only basketball, league in the world that's still playing on halves. I mean, it's like it's kind of ridiculous, pretty silly. The challenge is like, I don't know about you guys, like I've almost flip-flopped on this over the last like 10 years, like since replay became like more pervasive, like across pro sports, where like initially I was like all in, like I wanted the whole, like let's optimize, and let's like automate as much of this as we can. Like, let's get as many things right as possible. But those things just, I don't know, now that we're a decade in, or maybe more than a decade in on some of those things, I think you do feel the sort of like slowdown and the stoppages and those types of things. So I'm sort of like on stuff like this, I think I sort of chart out as it won't be that interesting. I'm like sort of indifferent on it because like these decisions are being made from on high, you know what I mean? Like, so this, it's not like we, the three guys talking on this, like we have any, sway or cachet here or whatever. We're just sort of like, blades of grass floating around in the wind. So, but ultimately, like, I do worry that like these games take a long time and you're now going to be implementing even more stoppages and slowdowns and getting basketball, like when it's being played at its best. Yes, like you're getting as many calls right as humanly possible, but like there's like a flow to it. There's a current to it. And sometimes I worry that we are implementing too many other things that are going to sort of like to get us further away from like that stream. But if you're getting more calls right, I think like it's hard to argue that as like a bad thing too. So that's sort of why, again, it's pretty boring, political answer, but I probably come out as sort of like neutral to like slightly worried maybe about it.
Well, I think the problem is it's still pretty much a subjective decision. Even if you're going back and looking at the stuff, it's not like tennis, right? Where they have the camera that literally decides whether the ball was inbounds or not.
Sure.
It's still going to come down to refs looking at monitors and making a group subjective decision. It's going to be more informed than their initial split-second decision was, but it's still subjective ultimately.
Yeah. Sure. Well, it's also like, have you guys been at any, like I've seen this is random. I've caught this at a couple like Durham Bulls games the last couple of years when they have like the robo umps there, and like the challenge system for that is like really quick, like it takes, it's like it is in tennis. It takes a matter of seconds. And that's not what stoppages are like when you're talking about basketball or football or whatever, they, or soccer. They end up being, a little more lengthy. So
yeah. And there's really no way to make it where it's like you can like throw the challenge flag, it just goes up to video and the game keeps going, right? Because if it's a foul or if it's some kind of like they're going to stop it anyway. I mean, you're right. They stop it all the time as it is. So it will be kind of interesting. I'm kind of with you. I don't think too much is going to really change that much with it. But for sake of time, fellas, let's get into this stuff. So let's start at the top because why not? We'll start with Mr. Flag himself. So let's do a little Cooper talk. Dallas somehow sneaks in here and gets this #1 pick. So you got two Texas teams again coming in. After trading Luka, we've talked about it. We had Denver Valley on a little bit from Hardwood Knocks and talked about maybe some potential conspiracy stuff there. I know Brian's a Hornets guy. So for me, it was just like, how many times, man, can we just get shafted in like legendary type #1 situations? But here we are again. We'll talk about it. Unfortunately, we're not going to talk about the Hornets yet. So we're going to talk about Coop and likely Dallas. I mean, Brian, it seems like they have made it pretty transparent. They're going to keep this pick. They're going to roll with what they got. Do you see anything happening there, or do you think, okay, Coop's going to Dallas, and let's just try to figure out how we're playing 4 bigs, and this is what we're going to do, or what do you make of this kind of fit and situation for Coop?
Yeah, I don't think the fit is not like ideal in certain ways, mostly just because like it's an older team, and I think their timeline is going to be, they're trying to, I guess some of it really depends on Kyrie's health next season, or like what Anthony Davis's health may end up being or whatever. But like this is a team that like I'm sure their goal is to make the 2026 playoffs. And there's potentially some like good to that for a number 1 pick to sort of like come in and get to play with all-star type players, or even good young players like a Derek Lively. And I think maybe at some point there's like a pivot for Dallas, and like they sort of like end up maybe in 2027 they're building this around Cooper and Derek Lively. I think that could be kind of cool. But by that point, you're already going to be 2 years into Cooper's NBA career. I think he's ready. I think he's absolutely ready to like come in and like help a team win. Like he's crazy good. And we could do the full breakdown. We could pull up numbers.
He needs the Tatum situation, man. He needs to go into a situation like Boston, like Tatum did in 2017, where the pieces are there, and it's like,
and his role was very streamlined, right? Tatum's role was just defend and shoot threes for his first season, and
shot a lot of corner threes that rookie season when he was in Boston.
And then he slowly got to expand his role as he kind of picked up skills. By the playoffs, he was averaging 20 points a game and dunking on LeBron. And then the next year he takes a big leap. So it could be ideal for him in that scenario, but at the same time, the roster is just awkwardly constructed, especially if Kyrie is out. It's not like the Boston situation where they really had pieces in place at every position.
They drafted Jaylen Brown the year before too. So you've got another future young all-star, and maybe that's Lively is sort of like that version in Dallas or whatever. But yeah, like the Celtics had built something incredibly sustainable. They also hit on some monster trades that sort of like got them. I mean, the Derek White trade in 2022, the Drew Holiday trade in 2023, like they hit on some huge trades. And I mean, they just have up until the sale of the team, like a month ago or whatever, they just had like really, really good infrastructure in place in terms of like Wyc Grousbeck ownership. Front office turns into, Danny Ainge into Brad Stevens, good coaches with Brad Stevens, Ime Udoka.
So do you think this could suppress? Like, do you think this could suppress Cooper's situation? Then, when we talk about it compared to that, like, could this, like, because on one hand, I think you could make the argument where it's like, okay, you come in with vets, there's low pressure, but when we're looking at like absolute ceiling and just like really maximizing this thing, most of those guys get those like 2 to 3 years. I'm thinking of an SGA or somebody that you just get some space to kind of like, let's figure, like Wemby is getting it now, right? Like you just get a little bit of space to like kind of be the guy, but kind of figure this thing out. Does this suppress him? Like, is he even going to be able to, like, are we almost like cutting 3 years from his like legs just because it's going to take a while for the roster to work out? Or
I generally prefer a like slow build when you have if you're theoretically getting one of these guys dropped into your lap, like a tier 1 type prospect, a guy that profiles as a future all NBA guy, a franchise player, an all-star, all of that sort of stuff. For whatever it's worth, like I think Cooper's going to be fine no matter what, because I just think like he's awesome independently. It doesn't matter. And like we saw it up close covering him at Duke this past year. He's going to be totally cool coming in playing with vets. Like he's a total winning player. He's a crazy competitor. Like he's built for it in a way.
Played with AD before too already.
Yeah.
So
in Team USA. And I mean, he's just at every stage of his very young career, he's just like hit the mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just from a competitive level, he's always present. That said, like I do think there's the chance where like you get to a place where, maybe it's 2-3 years from now, Dallas has been trying to continue to push for playoff contention, deep runs in the playoffs, like whatever. and all of a sudden Kyrie and AD are into their mid-30s. And all of a sudden you're looking around and like there's not like a young cast around Cooper. You know, like again, they have Derek Lively. At this point, PJ Washington, whom I like, is probably like a little too old to be sort of like young core type of player. And so I guess in theory, you might be able to trade in this hypothetical, you might be able to eventually trade AD or Kyrie and get some stuff, you know, to sort of like build it up around Cooper. So there is that. There's still like levers for them to pull. Ultimately, like, I'm not too worried about it. Like, I think this guy is going to like win everywhere he goes. And this will be a new kind of challenge for sure. But it's going to be kind of fun to like, I mean, he might be 10 months from now, he might be playing in the playoffs. And that could be like kind of cool to see. Like, again, you mentioned Tatum's a great comp, but just like that, like a rookie playing like, you know, big leverage minutes in a postseason scenario. I mean, there's a ways to go between now and then, but it is sort of like fun to think about. And he's so young. I mean, he's going to be next season's going to be his age 19 year. So there's plenty of time, I still think, for them to like pivot. It's just like it's that pivot. If it turns out so that they don't get that much in return for maybe moving off some of their aging veterans, then all of a sudden you might be looking at Cooper with like less of a like supporting cast around him, in part too, because like Dallas has some picks out the door. Like, I think it's their 2027 first round pick. It's top 2 protected, I believe, to Charlotte.
Yep.
Now, I will say, I was, before the night of the draft lottery, I was thinking that pick might be pretty good for Charlotte. Like 2 years from now, if Kyrie and AD are have fallen off, like, man, maybe that's a top 5 pick or whatever. Now with Cooper there, it feels like that's probably going to not be
back in purgatory again.
Not nearly as good of a pick. But the point being, like, Dallas has future assets out the door, which is sort of like that's not even like wrong or bad. That's just sort of like the sign of like an aging veteran team that's sort of like gone all in on its current core and then just happened to just luck up and win the lottery and get Cooper. So, and I got to say, like, the current front office, which may have like saved its job by lucking into winning the lottery, like, look, Nico Harrison made some great trades at the deadline last season to get PJ Washington, to get Dan Gafford, and have those guys be part of a core that came within a couple of games of winning an NBA championship. But this is the guy that also traded Luka Doncic for like 9 cents on the dollar. So like, right now, my like trust in the front office there is like lower than I would maybe like it to be for the place where Cooper is going to. But at the end of the day, I'll repeat it, like, Cooper is he's going to be a winner anywhere he goes, and I think he's going to be awesome anywhere he goes. And I think there's a chance that maybe they're unable to sort of like maximize the sort of like building of a like young nucleus around him, but just because they're not currently set up for that doesn't mean they can't sort of like find exit ramps to take, you know, in the next couple of years.
Sure. Do you think it could help his long-term development that next year Kyrie might be out for the whole season? Because when I look at their roster, who's doing the creation on that team? Anthony Davis is not really like a shot creator. Who is their best guard even? Like Spencer Dinwiddie or Jaden Hardy? You know, that's looking pretty bleak, right? So you might actually see Cooper with the ball in his hands a lot more than you would expect as a rookie, for better or worse, right? There could be some growing pains with that, especially like with a clogged front court. But in the long run, I'm thinking maybe it helps him.
Definitely. I mean, they're going to probably need him to play. They have some good wings. Max Christie had a nice stretch of play after he was dealt there from the Lakers, but he's not like a creator. Spencer Dinwiddie has been like a really nice sort of like microwave offense guy for a decade now in the NBA, basically, but he's probably 32, 33 years old. So I don't know how much you'll be able to sort of count on him next season. And I think they are going to be reliant on Cooper for some, you know, pick and roll reps and some on ball creation. And, obviously they're going to play through Davis a lot too. Like they're clearly going to, in ways that, like, you know, at some point, I'm sure we'll end up talking about, maybe not tonight, but a future pod, like we're going to end up talking about Duke's offense for next season. And as a team that I think is going to have to like play through the high post and play through the elbow a lot. And that's something that Dallas is going to have to do. It's just going to be kind of weird spacing wise. Playing Davis next to a center with Coop. And I will be also interested to see, like, my guess is they're going to have to trade Gafford, or they're going to look to trade Gafford this summer
for a guard.
And so what? Yeah, exactly. They need a guard. They need another. They need someone who can like run pick and roll and shoot off the dribble and that kind. And like, I mean, every team could use that, so it's not like it's plentiful. But Gafford is like a nice, potentially like a nice piece that you can use to acquire like a good veteran, guard creator.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's somebody unspectacular, like a Dennis Schroeder type or something, just somebody who's competent.
Somebody's got to be that. Yeah, you got to get somebody out there. I keep thinking that maybe you play around with but Cleveland doesn't need bigs, but it's you play around with, like, at some point, can we snatch Darius Garland? Can we just get him out of there maybe? Or does Sam Presti eventually, like if they lose, eventually he has to make a team say no with all these draft picks and just be like, I'm going to throw as much as I can. But we'll see. For sake of time here, I guess we'll move on. This is maybe debatable on who's next. For our sake, we're just going to roll with the big fella here. Talk a little bit about Kaman Malwatch. Lots of kind of variance when you get to him and Khan a little bit. I think more so for Kaman here. Toronto was a fit that was talked about really early. Then you saw like the last kind of couple weeks at the combine where there was a lot of buzz about, this kid can really put it on the floor a little bit. The shooting looks real. Where are you at with him? Because I think the further you get up the ladder, the fits become kind of more complicated. I guess let's start for you. Kind of what do you like? What system or what area or what team drafting in this lottery kind of top 10-ish space do you like the most for Kaman?
It's interesting. We sort of talked. We can go and just get into this, and then I'd like to sort of like talk a little bit more about just like Kaman as like a prospect and a player. Like if the Hornets are looking to move Mark Williams this offseason, like in another trade, which I don't know. I'm not sure if it's 50-50 or 70-30 or who knows, but they're in a weird spot with Mark as the sort of like on paper franchise center, but they literally traded him to the Lakers 4 months ago before it was rescinded. He played well down the stretch. He was healthy. And he's extension eligible this summer too, for whatever it's worth. But the Hornets, I mean, there are some like real Duke connections. They had training camp up in Durham ahead of this past season. Duke's 5-out offense and the 5-out offense the Hornets run have some similarities, if that's worth anything. Like Kaman played a lot of that 5-out where he was spaced to the elbow, to the wing this year, as opposed to having him in the middle. We talked about this a lot, and that way Cooper or Tyrese or Sion could be like the middle decision maker. And Charlotte did a lot of that this season as well, with Mark Williams spaced to the left wing, and then LaMelo, Brandon Miller, someone else sort of like Grant Williams sort of like operating in the middle of the floor. So there's some similarity there. I think Charlotte is a team that really values having like athletic centers, because they'd like to defensively, they like to do a lot of cross matching at the 4 and 5. And so if they play a team like New York that has Karl Anthony Towns like a pick and pop 5, then sort of similar to what the Boston Celtics or some other teams would do, Charles Lee, who was an assistant in Boston with Joe Mazzulla, he's going to put his 4 on Towns or on the opposing, pop 5. And he's going to switch as many of those as possible. He's going to take his 5 and he's going to stash that person on basically like the weakest, non-shooter, on the floor, and then use that player to like rove and be a deterrent at the rim. Rob Williams was really good with this a couple of seasons ago up in Boston. Porzingis has done well in this role, and it's something Mark did at times this season with the Hornets as well. And I think that's a role that like Kaman, he didn't really do that at Duke necessarily. Like he really was like the screen defender in many different ways. But I think it's something he could be good at, with his ability to cover, his length, his motor, his ability to cover ground. I think Kaman also with his ability to catch lobs gives them a discrete set of skills that even if the jump shot never comes, even if the sort of like face up game never comes, and even if he really just sort of like maxes out as like a handoff guy, not really like a passer, like a face up playmaker type, his ability to dive to the rim and catch lobs is something that they, whether yes, one, they would want to have that next to LaMelo Ball, or in Brandon Miller, who are two tall shooters who can really pass too. But just like, I think that's something they want to be like a pressure point on the rim, that lob threat. And the two best centers in the draft are Kaman Malawach and Derek Queen. Derek Queen is awesome. I really, really like him. And he might be more of like a 6'10", 270-pound guard than he is like a 5, but it's like, he doesn't do the stuff like mobility, ground coverage wise, defensively that Kaman does. He's not the above the rim lob threat that Kaman is. They're both sort of like maybes, question marks in terms of their ability to like stretch out and hit pick and pop threes. Neither one has shown like a ton of that there, but it's maybe in the development pathway for both their guys or for one of them. So I think all of those things would make Kaman a team that like Charlotte would need to be thinking about this guy. You know what I mean? That said, I think Charlotte is looking more towards guards and wings. I think they're looking VJ Edgecombe, Con Knipple, maybe Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson. Like I think they're like swimming more in those waters. Kasparis Yakachonis, to me, 4 would be way too high for him, but there's Kristen Peak over at Yahoo was maybe suggesting that, some team in the lottery had given Yakachonis a promise, and maybe it was Atlanta at 13, maybe it was Charlotte at 4. So, maybe he's a possibility. Again, that to me would be too early, but I think Malawach is a guy that a lot of teams would be interested in because of the lob threat, because he maybe has some like upside offensively with his ability to pick and pop eventually, with his ability to, we saw him at Duke. Like he was not the sort of like face up short roll passer that like Malik Brown and Pat Gongba were, but you saw Kaman like at the elbow, like he's pretty good at like flashing up to the elbow and like catching and then like immediately getting it into it. And like, that's pretty simple stuff, but he's not just like he's not just a lob threat. Like I actually think there's something, I think there's like some like feel to his game in sort of some of those like middle ground playmaking areas that's becoming like an important component of like a lob threat, or like a rim runner at the 5. The one thing I worry about with Kaman, regardless of where he lands, is I'm a little curious to see like how the defense shakes out for him. Because he obviously had like a great season defensively at Duke this year. Maybe we talked about this, but like didn't block as many shots as you might think, like he was hovering around, just under 7% block rate.
Yeah, like half the block rate of Lively, for example.
Yeah, exactly. In half of it of Mark, when Mark was there in 2022. And had a pretty high defensive rebounding rate, 19%, but
struggled at times with that.
I think it
was
really fluctuated. Like I think there were some games he really struggled with positioning with his hands. There were some games
against strong centers is what I noticed.
Exactly. I actually think not to draw the Mark comparison again, but I think both those guys like were not, Mark's freshman and sophomore year, Kaman's freshman year weren't like super strong in terms of like their base. And so you could sort of like bump those guys and knock them either in the ground or when they're on the air. And Malawach, Duke used him a lot to switch out this year. And he had some like great possessions switching out.
Yep.
And I thought some of his work in like the Notre Dame game and the Alabama game, these like sophisticated pick and roll offenses that, you know, after they set the initial screen, they're just going to start buzzing around and sending all these like second and third ghost screens with the different guards and stuff like that. And I thought, come on, in both those games and in the Pittsburgh game was like really good switching out, but he still got beat in those games too. Like you can attack his feet and cross him over and get by him. I think Duke could cover up for a lot of that because you'd have Cooper behind the play, you'd have Sion behind the play, you'd have
just
like
so much length everywhere, right? Like just so much length everywhere.
Exactly. And like, you know, some of it is like, you know, big time, you know, Cooper, you know, maybe the best help defender in the country last year. So I think like Kaman's switch potential is interesting, but I think it's something like, I think he struggled with some like zippier guards in college. And I think that'll probably be an issue in the NBA. My guess is he'll play a lot of drop coverage. But he does give you some versatility on that end. I do sort of worry about him. Like if the rim protection doesn't hit, if he struggles defensively on the glass and he gets kind of caught in between like what his coverage is supposed to be guarding pick and roll. I sort of like worry about sort of like the early years, but I think he's going to become a good defensive center. I think his tools, his motor, his commitment to getting better are all very good. And I do think he'll become like a good defensive center, maybe not like an all defensive team kind of guy, but I do think he'll settle in and be like impactful and good on that end. And then he's giving you good stuff on offense too. So I think he could fit in some areas. I think the conversation in Charlotte is interesting, but probably not likely.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it just makes more sense for Charlotte to keep Mark Williams at this point, considering that his value has been deflated by, you know, the health issues. And then it's like, okay, we have a choice, trade him for limited value or get him back on a cheap contract. Maybe it just makes more sense to get him back on that cheap contract. And then if he plays well, you can trade him in a year or something.
I think there's a possibility. I mean, I'd be curious to see like where Mark and his team on this are. It's like Charlotte, and I don't think this, I should preface this. Like, I don't think this is like a good thing for a player if this ends up bearing out. Cause it's like, Mark's a good young player. He should be able to like, you would want him to like max out his value and get a bunch of money. It's his first like big payday. But Charlotte, I guess in theory, like they could argue that maybe, I don't know if they're doing this, but just saying that like if his value's been diminished a little bit, maybe they can lock him in at like more of like a team friendly number, get some cost certainty with him. Again, I'm not advocating for that. I don't think that would be like a good thing in terms of like the players rights, in terms of like Mark as a human. Like I don't think that would be great. It might be good for the
team, and
it might be good for Charlotte. And like I do want to mention this because like I get that there were some like, how could there not be some sort of like awkwardness after the trade was like rescinded and he was shipped back? I do think, and I don't cover this team in the locker room. I'm not like on the beat. And I don't have like any inside knowledge with this. It did seem like he was more frustrated with the Lakers, understandably so, than he was like Charlotte. Like he came back and ended up playing pretty well for the Hornets this year. And like Charlotte didn't trade him for like a bag of peanuts. They traded him for a first round pick from the year prior, a first round pick swap, and an unprotected first round pick, which is basically like gold in terms of like future assets in the NBA. So it's like they can say like, yes, we had moved on. Maybe we were moving on from you, but we were sending you to what we thought was a good situation. Playing with Luka Doncic and LeBron James in Los Angeles.
You can average 18
sounds
and
pretty
8
good
easy there, right?
And we got a lot of stuff in return for you. And like, you know, if you wanted to dip into the like, you know, I don't want to be like a black helicopter NBA fan over here, but just like, I mean, if the Lakers, you know, got cold feet because they realized, hey, we gave up too much with that unprotected first round pick, and they got a little queasy after that and decided to, you know, void the trade. I don't know if that happened or not, but I think the Hornets have a case for Mark to look at Mark and say, look, we have and continue to value you. So like, maybe let's find a workable situation, whether that's him remaining in Charlotte or like looking for like the next trade for him for whatever it's worth for like other, you know, teams in the top 10. I can absolutely see why a team like Toronto with Masai Ujiri, who really values length, would be interested in him. I'm not surprised they're a team that has been linked to him. Brooklyn, they have Nick Claxton at center, but more than likely they're going to look to move him at some point this year would be my guess. New Orleans has Yves Missy, who they drafted in the first round out of Baylor last year, who had a nice rookie season. So it's probably not the fit. Washington drafted Alex Sarr last season with the number 2 pick. And Sarr is the guy that I think they might want to play. I think ultimately they're going to try to play him at the 4 and like maybe his long-term position becomes the 5, whatever. But like I could see a situation where it's come on playing with Sarr. Like if Sarr's like 3-point game comes online, then it's a possibility.
And then whichever one of them works out better, you kind of could probably gear things towards that too, right? You're not locked into playing them together.
Definitely. And I could even see like if he slid to like 12, I mean, Chicago, like Portland has, centers on the roster, including, Donovan Clingan just finished his rookie season. It was pretty good this year.
Very promising defensively.
If Kaman fell to 14, I don't think he will, but if he did, I could see San Antonio being interested in that. I could see Oklahoma City. I could see Orlando for sure. So it's like that, but like I don't think he's making it.
They don't have enough centers already, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like a team that really like Oklahoma City is like like almost over indexes on like length, from like a player archetype and prospect standpoint. So I see a lot of potential landing spots for Kaman. Maybe he has to be a little bit more patient draft night than he might hope, but he's a heck of a prospect. And I think a lot of teams in this top 10 would be like lucky to land a guy like him on their roster.
Yeah, I just don't know if I can buy into him going like 4 or something. It's like,
I don't think so.
To me, it's like, do you really want to draft a guy who's essentially a rim protecting center at this point? Like, I guess if you're drafting him 4, you really have to believe in his jump shot, right?
Yeah, you're thinking he's going to do more offensively than just be like a lob guy and like a handoff guy at the elbow. You're thinking he's got a pick and pop 3. He's got that he can turn into catch and go game, that maybe he has a face up game off of that. You're thinking he has more tools offensively than
and then suddenly Miles Turner or something, and then that's a whole different ballgame.
I think there's also, I can't remember if I mentioned this on the pod or we talked about it beforehand, but like Mark Stein had something in his Substack yesterday about, maybe Washington looking to trade up to 3 or 4 to get VJ Edgecombe. Washington has pick 6 and pick 18 in this draft. Like, I don't envision this happening, but let's say Dallas takes Cooper Flagg, San Antonio takes Dylan Harper, the Sixers take Ace Bailey, and Edgecombe's there at 4. The Hornets will probably just take him and just be happy with it. But if Washington calls up Jeff Peterson and says, all right, we're going to trade you picks 6 and 18 for 4. We're going to, we want VJ Edgecombe. Charlotte should probably do that. Move back 2 spots. And all of a sudden, if you're picking at 6, then Malawatch maybe makes a little bit more sense there, especially if you're like looking to move on from Mark at some point. Kaman becomes like your long-term fix. I mean, you could also get Con Knipple or Trey Johnson or, something else there at 6 as well too. So maybe that, I don't envision that being a lever to pull, but I suppose there's a possibility of it.
Sure. Well, I guess before we get into Con, we can take a little bit of a mini break here. I know we're on video for some of you on YouTube, but for our audio listeners, we'll take a little short pause. Oh, breathe, right? All right. So we've already talked a little bit about it. Khan to me is the most interesting of the Duke guys in terms of like where he's maybe projected to go, like the role that he can get, I think the immediate availability that a lot of teams are maybe looking for. Mm-hmm. This is not fair, Brian, but do you think he suffers from any like Reed Shepherd syndrome in this draft? Or, I mean, does that factor in? I hate to do the like white guard to white guard thing, but
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too, where like, I think if Shepherd had been somewhere other than Houston, he probably would have played this year too. I mean, if the Hornets had him, he probably would have done more for them. He just got kind of swallowed up in a team that has a lot of good young players plus some veterans, and was the 2 seed in the Western Conference.
Right, and we went for it. Yeah.
So, we're not going to write off Reed Shepherd just yet, but maybe. I will say if you watch Khan play though, it's different, right? Like this guy is 6'5", 220 pounds. He's strong. He plays with incredible pace and high feel. He's an amazing shooter, amazing off-ball mover, does like really advanced stuff coming off screens. As good as Shepard was like a great movement shooter at Kentucky. I think Khan with his size and passing and just like his footwork in those areas, it's just, I think he and Trey Johnson are the two best shooters in this class, and I think both guys, it'll be interesting to see sort of like who becomes like the best shooter during their NBA career. But to me, if you're writing off Khan because of anything, any sort of like past previous player that maybe falls into a similar archetype, I'm not even saying that sort of stuff is like it doesn't have some sort of value. But like I would just say you're sort of like missing the point with this guy because he's an amazing basketball player. Incredible passer, super high feel. And we saw it at times when he was at Duke, like when he played without Cooper, like he had another gear offensively. Like he's not just a pure spot up guy. He's not a pure come off screens and shoot guy.
He can get to the rim, he can pass.
Yes.
All that stuff, right? What did he average in the ACC tournament? Like he averaged like 25 and 6 or something.
When he was the entire hub, he created everything flowed through him, getting downhill with Kaman, like or his gravity off the ball. Like it all was predicated on what he could do. And then you throw in the fact that he's like first to the floor on a loose ball and like super locker room guy, like A tier. I think for me, Brian, like it was such a San Antonio is the marriage that should happen. And then they get the second pick and it's like, oh, I don't know if you can spring there for it. I don't think he's going to be there at 14
and
or wherever they
are.
Yeah. Harper's, you put that and Wemby together and that seems like just
to me, it's a done deal. Yeah. They'd be crazy. I think Harper is like clearly the second best prospect in this class.
And it gets weird. You mentioned Charlotte. I think that's a potential, but if VJ's there, maybe they pop for that. But I don't know, man. I think Charlotte's got some athleticism that maybe you don't have to go VJ. But again, I don't know the ceiling there. Yep. Where is the great fit? Like San Antonio was such the marriage, and now I'm kind of struggling on. Okay, where can he pop? Like where can he go and like really excel?
So a couple of things. Just want to back up for 1 second because I had to find the note where I had written these numbers down. But this is a small sample, but in the 283 minutes with Flag off the floor and Khan on the court this season. So this is including the ACC tournament plus other times throughout the season where Khan was in the game and Cooper wasn't playing. Duke still scored 130 points per 100 possessions. During those minutes with Flag off the floor, Khan 23% usage rate, 24% assist rate. That's up from 21% usage and 13.5% assist rate when he's on the floor with Cooper. In the minutes with Khan on the court and Cooper off, Khan can nipple 3.3 to 1 assist to turnover ratio with a true shooting percentage of 62.5%. Part of this is because Khan got to the line a ton in the minutes without Cooper. There are some other numbers that I could get into, but the point being is even when you scale it for matchups against quad one opponents, Khan was still like very, very good when he was basically like the driver of Duke's offense. And part of that, like Duke had a great offensive system. There's great supporting talent, yada, yada, yada. It's like the stuff was set up in place for him to still be very good in those minutes. That's like an obvious caveat, but he was quite good at it. And I'm sure y'all saw some of him before he got to Duke, like whether it was EYBL, whether it was him playing at Wisconsin Lutheran in high school. He has like a mid-range ISO game too that he didn't really get to a ton at Duke just because of like all the surrounding talent, what Duke's sort of like offensive profile was, and like Cooper was the one guy that was sort of like given like carte blanche to like create and shoot in the mid range. Khan had some of that, but that really was like Coop was the one guy that sort of like that was his like domain.
But you could see it in his little, like, when he didn't get all the way to the rim, or all of those little, like, kind of hard to the rim, it just comes back and just soft touch around the free throw line extended area. Like, he'd get a little bit deeper at Duke there. But I think with Kevin O'Connor, he was talking about, like, the mid-range game is something that I definitely have, and I think there's value in that, especially in the NBA game where the space just becomes – that can be a good shot for you.
Against any team that's playing a drop big, for example, right?
He's
perfect for that. Yeah.
Orlando,
where are you?
I've said this in a few spaces now, but like I think my favorite like micro skill of any draft prospect in the 2025 cycle, maybe like outside of like Cooper's like decision making, like sort of like quick passing, it was Khan attacking drop coverage this season. He is as patient. Something I was able to talk about with Shire after a few games this season. Like he's so good at waiting to the last second.
Yeah.
And like forcing the 5 at the rim and drop coverage to make a decision in those 2-on-1s, right?
Yep.
Either
between dropping back to prevent the lob or coming
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Khan's pretty good at he's just so patient, and he's strong enough to keep the defender that's coming over the screen is trying to get back into the play. Khan can just keep that guy in his hip because he's 220 pounds and he's, strong as hell. To me,
raise a question for me though, because that just got me thinking about his potential as an off the dribble shot taker, right? That's something we did not see a lot at Duke.
Yeah.
And actually, Kevin O'Connor had stats about that, and he took a ridiculously low number of threes off the dribble, like 15 the entire season or something.
If you go back to, but it's one of those things, it's like if you pull in like his high school numbers and EYBL numbers, then all of a sudden he took a lot of off dribble shots. Someone had his like high school and EYBL stats plus his Duke stats, and he actually had like way more shot diversity once you like pan out more than just sort of like what his role was at Duke. And I don't think that's like Duke making him play in a box or, he got to do a lot of stuff for them, but he kind of has this game in some situations. Like I've seen him comped. I think my buddy J. Kyle Mann at the Ringer, one of his comps for Khan has been Gordon Hayward. And if you remember Gordon Hayward, when he first came in the league, he was like, not like a hyper athlete, but he was like a really good athlete. Quinn Snyder ran lob plays for him in Utah, like plays to like get him alley-oops and stuff like that. But Gordon Hayward at the end of like post injury, sort of like at the end of his time in Boston and what he was in Charlotte, especially those first 2 seasons in Charlotte, he had like lost some bounds. He had lost maybe half a step, but he was such a high field player and he was super strong. And he made quick decisions, and he was a good passer, and he could score from multiple levels on the court, especially in the mid-range, in the short mid-range, long mid-range, and out to the 3 line. He was like pretty awesome in Charlotte when he was healthy, right? And that player type also really complemented LaMelo Ball quite well. Like LaMelo's rookie season in his second year, he and Gordon Hayward were like an excellent 2-man combination. So I actually think Charlotte would be like an awesome place for Khan. I think Utah would be a great place for him. I think Washington would be a great, like you can go down the line. He's so malleable as like, not just like as a great shooter and a great movement shooter, but just like knowing how to play without the ball and knowing how to relocate to get open, being a good screen setter. Think about all the off-ball screening actions he and Tyrese had to do at Duke this past season. Think about how Duke's bread and butter play, like the go-to play was probably inverted pick and roll with Cooper Flag and Khan Knipple screening for him, or Cooper screening for Khan. Those were,
right. And
that was like
the short roll. Kaman's coming over from the wing. Yeah.
That was how they ended the game against Kansas, but there were plenty of other games where that was like the get out of jail play, and Khan's ability to like screen hard and then pop, or screen hard and then relocate out of that. He just does a lot of stuff along with the shooting, which is big time, and the passing, which is great, that like you could copy and paste him on like any roster. Who couldn't
Yeah, I
use a
think
guy
you hit
like
on
that?
it. It's hard to find a bad fit for him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I wish Orlando was higher because I love that potential of just him and Suggs out there with kind of
How-
like a three
it's
He's
how
bigish.
kind of like mini Franz Wagner if Franz's jump shot would come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also this was my thought about. I mean, Khan and McCain are not like identical, though they do things well similarly.
Yeah.
They're both malleable guys that like are excellent playing off the ball, but can get on the ball and do some stuff too. And it was similarly like Orlando was the team where I was like, man, I wish they were like a little higher last year to get J-Mac, and it kind of feels that way with
This year too.
because like there's no way in heck he's going to be there. I think he's
they'd have to trade up. They'd have to hit up Brooklyn and probably or somebody in that
exactly.
8-9 range and just figure it out. I mean,
yeah. I will say this: as someone who's been studying the draft very seriously this year and thinking about it really through the context of Charlotte, I think I'm kind of getting to the point where like if Edgecombe is gone at 3, maybe Charlotte just takes Khan at 4, like and just gets a high field guy in there that can shoot. Yeah.
I like that over Bailey, to be honest with
I
you.
do too.
And probably just.
I know Khan's a year. I know Khan is a year older than Ace, and I know Ace has upside that is maybe puts him in a class like Ace has if Ace hits his like high end outcomes, he's like a top 3 player in the class. You know what I mean? Like along with Cooper and Dylan Harper.
I mean, he's a 6'10" guy who takes threes, right? That's
the problem is that he at the combine he measured at 6'7.5".
Yeah,
so it's like he's not. I will say this about Ace. One, he is an archetype of player that I have in the recent past, like I have sort of like struggled scouting, and I'm not like these guys are different players, but like the Michael Porter Jr., the Cam Reddish, the Brandon Miller, these are different players, but they're like tall wings that are just that like have some shooting upside, right? You know, and to me, with all of those guys, it's like, well, one, are they healthy? You know, but for Porter and I guess for Miller this season, but like Brandon Miller was a great learning moment for me covering the draft and scouting for the draft because he came in and did a lot of stuff that I was expecting him to do year 1 in Charlotte, but he just shot the ball so well. Like there's some mystery of just like, well, look, man, if they're going to, and Miller, his rookie season was probably like 18 months older than Bailey's going to be his rookie season. So there's that too. Ace is pretty young for this draft class. But it's like, if those guys come in and shoot, then all of a sudden you get the great defensive playmaking that Ace Bailey has. That's my favorite part of his game is like his work on the defensive end. He's got some decent connective passing abilities. It's just like he can't dribble and he's not very strong right now. And the shot to me still feels like a little bit less reliant than you might like it to be. So for me, Bailey is like a huge concern for the Hornets at 4. I could see them going that direction. I get it. But if they're bringing in another like tall shooter who like can't get to the rim to play with LaMelo and Brandon Miller, like that,
you definitely need to get rid of Bridges at that point, right? Like,
yeah, well, but I think it's one of those things. Like I think Bailey's going to take a little bit too. You know, it's like I mean, obviously he'll play some next season, but I think you're gonna have to like rewire him a little bit. You know, when he gets to the league. So I'm hopeful that wherever Ace lands, it's just a good situation. Because I think he has a lot of upside, and like if he shoots it with that length and that defensive potential, he has the chance to like be a really good NBA player for a very long time. And then just one last thing about Khan, because I wanted to bring this up earlier. Like, I don't know if Khan's ever going to be a guy that like is running 40 pick and rolls per game and is like a guy that's like self-creating a ton of offense. But I'll say this, players with that shooting touch, that strength, that passing ability, that those high feel players that really move well, those guys, like, not only do they stick around for a long time, but they often are guys that like are driving offense some way or the other. Do you know what I mean? Yep. Like a Desmond Bane type in Memphis, who's sort of like a sub all-star, but is a guy that's going to be 20 to 25% usage, makes a huge contract, is a guy that can you're going to run plays for him. He's going to run some offense occasionally for you. I think that like Khan can be one of those guys where like maybe he's a sub all-star. So maybe Bailey has more like high end, like just like sort of like raw upside, maybe a little bit more like all-star potential, but like Khan to me, I like him a little bit more as a prospect right now, just because not just because like he's ready to help you win more next season. I care less about that, but more so that it's just like, it's so easy to see him fitting in and being like, not just like a decent contributor, but a guy that's like really helping you offensively, like really helping you.
Third or fourth option on like a championship level team, right? He's kind of like, I kind of like look at him in that Austin Reeves kind of mold, maybe a little bit, where yes, you can shoot off ball, but you can also be on ball and create for others. And you can go for 25 points in a given night, but you can also take a backseat to the stars.
And there's some glue stuff like the TJ McConnell for the Indiana Pacers, watching that the other night, right? Where he's just kind of blitzing a passing lane here or there, just kind of playing bully on the baseline a little bit, willing to kind of get downhill.
The floor seems high, where at the very worst, I think he's like a 6 man for 10 years.
Right. Yeah. You see him just being in the league and I think, man, like if he really gets in a good situation and they just allow him some creativity, kind of freedom there, like his feel is just like, I know you mentioned it, Brian, but I think the best part of his game is people want to do that like Luka, but it's just that under control. Right. Like what is Khan saying? Like where smooth is slow or slow is smooth, but smooth is fast or whatever it is. Right. It's that little, you can't speed me up. I'm going to get to this spot. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it looks like. And there's a relentless nature to it where at Duke at times, I don't know if it was like just his choice or his feel, but I feel like it was a little bit from John because we saw it for some different dudes where when he's like, dude, just mash this. And just mash and mash and mash. And we'll make some kind of like, we'll do a little bit of different things. But for the most part, it starts from this very simplistic little action with you involved in it. And we're just going to go. And we flew, man. Like, look at the ACC tournament. You get into some of that stuff. You get into some of the things against Alabama.
Well,
I mean, even against Houston, I mean, it doesn't matter who the defense was. Like, he was able to operate.
Yeah, he was amazing last season. He was good.
I said on the podcast that I thought he was actually not Duke's most talented player, but Duke's best player over the last month or so. I thought there was a strong argument for that from like probably the second Carolina game through basically the end of the tournament.
He became an elite defender in that space too, right? Like there were questions early, and like, I mean, I think there's still some questions, but the way they were able to use him and his just commitment to doing the things well that he can,
and his strength, right?
That's huge.
And I think the lateral question marks are a little overblown, man. Like I think like there's a little bit there, like sure, like if he's guarding Kyrie Irving, like good luck any kid, like anybody.
There's like
good luck, man.
There's like 3 people on earth that like can keep.
But for the most part, man, like if he's matched up against Derek White or Drew Holiday, they might bully him a little bit. I think he can hold, dude. Like I think he can.
I think that a lot of that stereotype, right? It's like this stocky white dude, doesn't look like he should be good defensively.
I think a couple of things. One, good team defender, which is like where you need to start with it. Can do a lot of different stuff for you. Is in the right places. Like that was not to like draw another McCain comparison, but like early in J-Mac's freshman year at Duke, he was like all out of sorts off the ball, pick and roll stuff. The Georgia Tech game in Atlanta 2 seasons ago was like McCain botched 2 big time misses, not tagging the roller, not being in the right spot. Khan routinely is like hit, and J-Mac got better with that stuff throughout his freshman year at Duke, but like Khan hits all the right notes offensively. I do think there's laterally on the perimeter, for me, it was always like the guys that get into his feet, attack his top foot with those crossovers, those sort of like, hezzy hang dribbles, and they're able to cross over right to left and sort of like get around him that way. I think laterally there's some question marks there, but, and this is an important note, and you guys touched on this a second ago, his strength. like as much as there may be like a target on his back when he comes to the NBA in terms of teams trying to go at him, like one of the ways teams try to like isolate against like weaker one-on-one defenders is they try to take like a power wing and get that guy switched onto them and then have like a post up off of it, right? Or have like a Barkley style back down from the wing. Like you're not going to go at Khan that way. Like the way that you can go at like Tyler Hero in the NBA.
Right.
Do you know
Sure.
what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
Like there's, yes, I think you can like attack him in space. You can try to like, cook him and, again, get into his feet and, combo moves with the crossover and, get him going laterally and then, dribble it the other way and get around him. But I don't think you can just say like, let's just mash him in the post. He's 6'5", 220, super strong and super competitive. And like, he knows what he's doing.
Competes on the boards, like bodies you. Yeah. The whole
So
thing.
it's just like, I think that alone means he's less vulnerable in terms of like leverage minutes, teams going after him defensively, because like you can't just punish him physically. Like
It means you can
one-on-one.
use him more creatively defensively too. Like look at the way Boston uses Drew Holiday, for example. Like he will just straight up guard a center or a four.
Yeah.
And, Khan, I think gives you that flexibility. Like I think he might even be better if he was matched up with a 3 or a 4. Maybe not a center, but, versus trying to guard an Irving or somebody super quick.
Yeah. And like, he's not going to be that, like, he's only guarding the, like, geez, both these guys. I was going to say Dame Lillard, but man, he's hurt too. But it's like, he's not going to like, you're not going to like put him on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander next season. That's like Oklahoma will get a switch and try to go after that. Not like, he's not going to be tasked with stopping that guy.
And if
he'll
they
be put on Lou Dort or something.
Yeah, it is a very tankable situation where it's like, hey, just go see what you got. Just go. You want that matchup? Go get it tonight because we ain't got nothing else. So it's just you on an island, man. Good luck. We've mentioned a lot of the Boston Celtics, and I think that's probably because this Duke team was built exactly like the Boston Celtics. So as we pivot into Drew Holiday and Derek White, or
the Celtics and the Jazz, man.
Sion James and Tyrese Proctor. It's that, man. It's that same like.
Honestly, the Hornets are doing. I know the Hornets are not as successful as Boston, but like the Hornets are doing a lot of. There's like those are there's some,
skill size,
scheme wise. There's some overlap too with all of those teams.
Yeah, we've talked about we like Charlotte's process. It's just they need health and they need better players.
They need a little draft luck too, man. And it's we don't have to get into all that. But I do want to spend a little bit of time. I know we've been going kind of long here. I think Sion and Tyrese are at least worth touching on.
Definitely.
I hate to keep doing the Boston thing, but you saw like Derek White at times get up like 14 threes in a game. Tyrese kind of was similar to that towards the end of the season, especially like ACC tournament into that those Louisville Baylor games where he's taken 8, 9, 10 threes a game. There's a lot of talk about whether he runs this thing back. I decided to kind of just commit and go for it here. Where do you see Tyrese? I know we've talked a lot about Proctor with you on this podcast over these 3 years, and he's really kind of developed into this kind of moldy off ball, can like sub in a pinch, just got really good connective court vision. Foot speed is always a little bit there. Sometimes decision making is there, but the 3-point shot really just kind of popped this year. I think in terms of a volume, he really developed that little kind of like off dribble, coming off that kind of like drag to the left, just pulling up. He loves that spot there. What do you like about Tyrese here, and where do you think this kind of goes for him? We're assuming kind of like somewhere in that early mid-ish second round. I don't know. What do you make of the Tyrese Proctor experience?
Yeah, he had a really interesting career, didn't he? Like the way it sort of like changed year to year. And then he just snapped into like, I think like the perfect role for him. I wrote about this. I'm sure you guys were like on this too throughout the year, but like a big thing for him this season was like, even though he spent less time on the ball, I'm not sure there's anyone on the team that benefited more from like Duke's, how they sort of like started running offense this season than Tyrese, who got to he still was on the ball a decent amount, but really got to play off of guys like Sion and Cooper, obviously Khan, and the sort of like short roll and elbow passing of guys like Brown and Gongba, and all of the like sort of like 5-out motion stuff that Khan excelled at, and Isaiah Evans had his moments with this season. I mean, Tyrese cooked off that this year too, right? I mean, his screen usage, flares, down screens, was really, really good this season. Stating the obvious, I think his production this season like really flew under the radar. And I wrote about this at one point too. Like, one of the biggest shifts for him this season was, or really it was sort of like a multi-year development, was like he didn't take like a ton of mid-range shots his freshman season, but by the end he was basically like all at the rim or threes. Like, had really, really cut down on mid-range shots. It had really like gone all in. I mean, Sion in sort of a different way, but was sort of like getting up a similar shot chart, clearly like, again, John Duke staff pulling from these sort of like NBA areas was like, look, you guys are, I mean, there was guys were like stars in their roles, but they were like secondary guys to Cooper and Khan. And so like those guys, like it was about playing off the ball, spotting up, relocating, setting good screens, running the floor, being a connective passer. And those guys crushed those roles this season. For me, I think I've like said this a few times since going back to Tyrese's freshman year. Like, I never thought he was all of a sudden going to like get like become all of a sudden just like turn into like a better like athlete overnight. I think he got stronger. I think he had 8 dunks this season. Like, he had maybe like a little bit more like vertical pop, but like not much. And he had some sort of like on ball wiggle, but like never, like for me, the thing for him was always going to be like getting the 3-point shot going. Like, that was always going to be like his ticket. And if you go back to his freshman year, it's like, 87% from the line. Like, he seemingly always had it in him to become like a better shooter. There were like indicators you could buy into, and he got better year over year from deep. Weirdly, his free throw shooting like was not great this season, but he shot it well from
especially late.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Whoops. It's unfortunate, man. But his ability to shoot like that from deep with his, obviously not like 6'4", 193 pounds at the combine, I think is what he measured in at. High field player, ball mover, knows how to set good screens. Like, I think to me, he's probably more like mid to late second round. Like, he's probably more in that like 40, 45, 50 range. I'll be curious to see like where he ends up for me by draft night, but he's probably like in that, somewhere in that range, which like, like that, sometimes that's tough because once teams get to that range, they might start looking for like draft and stash guys, or you're looking for younger players as opposed to a guy like Tyrese, who's 21, 22. And like, there's a chance like he could just like slide out of the draft, but obviously he would get like within minutes after the draft ending, you would get a notification from Shams Charania saying the Boston Celtics have signed Tyrese Proctor to an undrafted free agent deal, and like, I mean, I think he's gonna like, next season, like my guess is he's sort of like is splitting time between the G League and the NBA. Sure. Like, he's one of those kinds of players. Like, I think he's gonna find, whether he gets drafted or not, I think he's gonna like has the chance to like find his way onto an NBA roster, because super competitive, super heady player, watches all the film, can shoot it, can defend enough at the point of attack, knows where to be as a team defender. If you do that, like low turnovers, low mistakes, 3-point shooting, and play like a couple of different sort of like guard roles, guys like that can have like long careers in the NBA. So it's going to be, it's going to be tough. This is probably like maybe a different pathway than some may have projected with him, at this point, 2 years ago or whatever. But for me, this is sort of like kind of what I would have expected with him, So I think he's a draftable prospect for sure. But I also like wouldn't be like floored if he fell out of the draft, knowing that if he does, he's going to get snapped up very quickly. Like a team is going to roster this guy. He'll be playing summer league basketball in July
Immediately.
for someone. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
I mean, I guess the good news there is if you go 40 through 60, you might be going to a good team.
Yeah.
And that could segue us to our next guy, Sion James, right? Like,
Mhm.
I really like the idea of both Tyrese and Sion ending up in like a team that really wants to go for it right now and maybe needs a guy who can instantly contribute. For me, the dream Sion James destination is Denver, who I think has a pick in like the late 40s or early 50s or something like that. Like, just I want to see those guys on teams with a bunch of veterans who need you to do a very simple kind of circumscribed role, right? Like imagine Sion
For low cost. Yeah. Basically.
yeah, like a controlled asset, right? Like imagine Sion as like a poor man's Aaron Gordon / poor man's Bruce Brown with Jokic. You know,
Right.
you know,
Or
that's
Tyrese playing off
essentially-
LeBron and Luca or something, just like picked
Yeah.
up, and it's just like, yeah, we just need you to be a 8th, 9th guy, 10th guy, whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Or put either of them on Boston. I think that would have to happen outside the draft because Boston's pick is 32nd, I believe. So they're not going to pick either of those guys that high. But you know, any of those teams.
And that's probably the best like ceiling for them, like the best path of like, hey, you need to come in and just be a great culture guy, do what you're doing, be who you are, but like just really amplify that.
Defend
culture.
and move.
Yeah.
Defend and move and shoot.
I don't think it's out of the question that like he goes at 32 to Boston. Sion.
Really?
He is like he's just such like a Celtics wing, like his strength, his competitiveness, his ball movement.
Magula would play him at center. Let's be honest.
I mean, they played him in the dunker spot in some lineups this season offensively. You know, when they would, especially when they would go like with Cooper at the 5. You know, you'd see Sion doing the Drew Holiday, Derek White. You know, playing the dunker spot, float around the baseline. Like he knows how to do that. But for me, it's like it's like his strength and speed components are, I think, really appealing to several teams. You know, if he fell to 44 where Oklahoma City is, that's a team that wants to drive the ball. They want to drive it. Like everyone on that team is hell-bent on getting into the paint. And I could, Sion, he talked about it a lot at Duke last season. Like he knew his role was to be like a paint touch guy for Duke and to be like a source of rim pressure. And he really like took it on himself. And, you know, he's probably not the most sort of like, you know, he doesn't have like a ton of wiggle. He's probably not your most like creative pick and roll initiator, but just like him catching on a straight line and getting into those little like spin moves and sticking his shoulder into people, like really tough player. I could see a team like Detroit that's just got a lot of like tough, strong, physical guys at 37. I see a lot of like interesting landing spots for him. San Antonio. I'll just say this, like, I think a smart team is going to end up with him. Because I think
I would like to see some arm wrestling matches between Sion and Lou Dort.
Desmond Bain.
If they are in the same
Desmond Bain, or him and Beef Stew in Detroit.
Yeah.
Pick the strongest guys from any of these teams. But yeah, I think Sion has the chance to go in that like the early second round. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like he's maybe like a tier or two above maybe where Tyrese might go. I just think his strength and speed and defense give him a little bit more. He's not like the shooter that Tyrese is, but I just think he's got like sort of like more pathways to being like a role guy, you know, that certain teams would really value. The on-ball defense is quite good. And I just think his ability to be like an extender, to be a guy that like maintains advantages as like a ball mover, a cutter, a screener, is quite good. And so like, you know, he's the kind of guy that I just think you drop him in and he just immediately starts doing little things that help you win games. So I've been in on Sion as a prospect for the NBA before he even got to Duke. And so it's cool to finally like see this sort of like coming together. And I think his year at Duke was really good, like training, because I think you're going to see him, at Tulane, he played the matchup zone, in sort of like a different role, often could just be found chilling in the corner a lot on offense. And obviously he played out the corners a lot at Duke this season too, but it was sort of different because it was like, he'd bring the ball up, get them into their offense, then he'd sprint to the corner and like, be there for a Cooper kick out or whatever. But Duke put him in the action in a lot of different ways as well. And I mean, like I've said this to you guys before, but like, I know Duke did not bring in any sort of like scholarship transfer guys, but like Sion would be I guess they like, I would be curious to know if like Sion's like development and role and how like the year went for him was a part of the pitch to Cedric Coward, like coming in this season. Like, look what this guy popped in for a year. We put him in in a role that's going to look very similar to what he will be doing when he leaves Durham and becomes a professional. And yeah, I just think like if that wasn't a thing that helped them with said, I think it should have been. And I think it's something that this staff can use moving forward. If you're like a veteran guy that sort of like fringes in terms of like prospect status, like come here, we'll set you up, we'll get you in the right role, and we're gonna get you paid, and then we're gonna boost your status before you make the jump to the NBA. And it worked really well with Sion this season.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with Coward, it's like, oh, I'm 2 inches taller and I can hit 73 pointers in a row.
Yeah. You know, and you have to look, dude, you have to give. I was texting with a buddy about this, like right around when it was like right around the combine. And it was just like, look, you have to, when it was just like, when it was like getting to become pretty obvious that like he was going to just stay in the draft.
Coming, yeah.
And it was like, you got to give Duke's staff credit. Like they tried to get this monster in the door. They almost pulled it off, like they were really close. But
if only he had just been injured just a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously like incredible work to like have the chance of getting him. And then obviously to be able to pivot to Sarr into Wilkins was
pretty big time.
Man, incredible. The Duke staff did unbelievable stuff in the span of a few weeks after the end of the season. And yeah, I mean, Coward, it's gonna be he's like maybe to me one of the most, once you like get outside of like the, I don't know, maybe the top 10, I'm like sort of like most interested to see where he lands. Is it pick 12? Or is it pick like 23, or is it pick 27? Like you could see him going in a lot of different areas. So, but yeah, I think like that's a great, I think Duke setting itself up for like those types of like wings that can come in and fulfill a role and use that to sort of like, as a launch pad to the NBA is like a really good thing for them to be like, in the market of selling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Brian, again, we appreciate you, man. I know we're kind of running a little bit long here. We talked a little bit about it on the front end as the draft gets closer, as you continue to kind of gear up here. What's on the horizon? What are you looking forward to kind of covering over the summer? Where can the folks find you? Give us all the plugs.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at bgeis_bird. Obviously putting out a lot of videos and stats over there. You can also find me on Blue Sky at bgeisinger.bsky.social. I'm on Twitter at bgeis_bird. I will be continuing to put stuff up at 247 Sports, more sort of like off-season content, scouting reports of players coming in, breakdowns of maybe some incoming prospects, sort of maybe some thoughts on like Duke's offense ahead of next season. So that stuff will be going up either at my Substack page, which is titled Split the Action, but it's my name, Brian Geisinger.substack.com. Looking forward to trying to continue growing that. And I am a part of a podcast that covers the Charlotte Hornets. That's the Buzz Beat podcast. We're putting out basically 2 episodes a week, one of which is free to the public. The other one, you have to be a paid subscriber to our Substack page to get on that one. But we're heavy into draft coverage, and we've been talking a lot about con. We're going to be talking more about Kaman Malawatch next week. So please look forward to that. Buzzbeat, you can find us on Substack and obviously every podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're listening to pods, you can find us there too.
Nice. Well, always, Brian, we appreciate you coming on, man, and spending some time here. We had quite a few guys to get into this this time around. So hopefully we'll come back. I'm sure we'll come back at some point before the season starts to do some of that. We can touch on how wrong we were about all of these guys and where they ended up going. And I remember at one point we had you on here and I was crying about Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller's sword now. And it's just like, who knows with this stuff. It's so fluid, but yeah, either way, man, we appreciate you. We'll get out of here. For you all, rate, review, subscribe. Obviously, we're up on YouTube now. You can find us there, TheDevilsDen.com on YouTube. You can find us on the boards at TheDevilsDen.com. You can email us, TheDevilsDenPod@gmail.com. We're on X/Twitter at DevilsDenPod247, as you can see down there. We got some exciting guests coming up this summer, just trying to kind of figure out some scheduling stuff. So looking forward to that one. But keep the faces strong and the verb high. Go Duke.